Hello beautiful people and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Anava and I make faith related and medical related videos. It has been a hot minute since I made a video and I'm so glad to be back on this platform. I missed you guys so much and I'm so happy to come back and make more videos for you. I'm going to be talking about certain cases that I saw as an intern that kind of like made me or broke me, or the best ones or the worst ones, and so on and so forth. I have 10 points with me here on my phone, and that is what I'm going to be following. So without wasting any more time, let's go straight into the video. Just a disclaimer before I start, I'm going to be answering these questions based off the top of my head. So basically I'm going to be sharing the first thing that's going to come to mind. The amount of patients I saw is a very huge number. I don't remember every encounter, and I do have multiple encounters that did stand out to me, but I am going to be answering this based off the ones that I can remember immediately, meaning that I'm pretty sure that means they meant the most to me. I don't know, but anyway, I'm just going to be answering this based off whatever comes to mind immediately. So the first instance is the happiest case I ever saw. The happiest case I ever saw that made me feel so fulfilled. So when I was an intern, I had a little baby. She was 9 months old, if I'm not mistaken. 9 months old, and she was admitted in the malnutrition ward for severe malnutrition. It was really bad. Like, that child was so tiny, so malnourished, just immunodepressed. It was really, really bad. And I remember that was the period that I was in the malnutrition ward for, I think, like 2 months or something. And I saw her every single day. Somewhere along the line, she was diagnosed with TB. Somewhere along the line, she was diagnosed with HIV. Somewhere along the line, she was diagnosed with anemia. Somewhere along the line, she was diagnosed with pneumonia. Like, that child really suffered. And so when the time came for her to finally leave the ward, I'm the one who discharged her. And from the time that I moved to the malnutrition ward and found her, it was like maybe like a week or two after her admission, I moved to the malnutrition ward and found her. Like, she was just, oh, the pain I had in my heart when I used to watch that child. But moving down the months, and 2 months later being able to write and say, you are going home. And the child had gained weight and was chubby and so cute. And I remember, like, every time that I would walk into the malnutrition ward and go to her bed, she would like laugh. Her face would light up when she'd see me, and I'd play with her, I would tickle her. And it was just so nice to see that transition. Like, guys, it was so nice to see that transition of someone from a near-death experience to literally walking out of the ward and being healthy and being a playful baby, and her being able to even just smile at me. Like, it was so fulfilling, because she just used to lay in bed and do nothing. Like, it was just so fulfilling. I think I can say that is one of the happiest cases I've ever had. Yeah, a malnourished child, and seeing that child through to the point where they gained weight. It wasn't even like like the child went back to normal by the time we finished treating on the infections and everything. So yeah, that was a good case. My saddest case. Ooh, my saddest case. I've had, that's my laptop going off. I've had quite a number of sad cases. There's 2 that I'm thinking of right now, but I think I'll go with the one for the CP patient. I was an obs and gynae. I had a patient, she was a CP patient, a cerebral palsy patient, bedridden, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, literally just was kept in bed. And she was about 12 years old. And her family brought her in because they discovered that she was pregnant. How they discovered, I don't know, but basically the child was being molested and abused by, I think it was an uncle or something. I don't know. This is a child, like, she has cerebral palsy. She doesn't even talk. She can't walk. She's bedridden. Like, all she does is lay in bed 24 hours a day. And someone somewhere felt the need to abuse that child. And so they brought her in and they said, no, would like to get an abortion and everything, because if you didn't know, it's legal at a government hospital below a certain number of months. And so, like, just, that was such a painful experience, because I looked at her like, guys, people are wicked in this world. I looked at her and I'm like, who in their right mind would walk into a room and see that in bed and be like, you know what? Yes. Like, people are so wicked. I think that was like my saddest case, because it just broke me, like the extent to which people go to. There's another one. I think my saddest cases were in obs and gynae. That's why I hated that department. I loved it, like the maternal aspect, the giving birth and everything, but everything else I hated. I had a child who was, I think that one was 11 years old, 10 or 11 years old. And she came in because her parents had discovered that she was being abused by someone who hangs around the neighborhood. He wasn't like a homeless man, but he just used to hang around the neighborhood, and he was a neighborhood drunk. And she came in because I don't know if she came home late and they kind of like forced the truth out of her. And she says, every time he sends me to the shop, like he always catches me on the side of the road and he does this to me. And she never said anything. It started like when she was 8 years old or something. She never said anything because he would always threaten her. And guys, when she came in, this girl had like genital warts, which if you know is a sexually transmitted virus. Genital warts, like her HIV was positive, like he had infected her with so much. And this is a 10-year-old child. Guys, oh my gosh, I was on gynae. Okay, you know what, I'm about to get emotional. Let's move to the next point. The scariest case. The scariest case I had. Ooh. Besides like maybe the violent psychotic patients, it was not scary in the sense that I thought they would hurt me because there was always like the guards and everything around. But just scary because they were violent. But I think like the one which kind of like scared me from the inside was at the peak of COVID, like peak of COVID, when I was moved to the COVID ward. I worked there for like 3 months. I have made videos about that, by the way. I'm going to link them up here if you'd like to see them. And then at the peak of COVID, there's this man who came in and he was generally stable. He was generally stable. He was able to communicate with me. He walked into the ward. I think that was like at 14, the time they admitted him. He walked into the ward. They didn't even have to like wheel him in. He walked into the ward. He was like, doc, you know, I don't even have any difficulty breathing, but they admitted me because of my saturations. Saturations were like in the 70s or something. And he walked in. That admitted me because of my saturations, but I don't even feel bad. I don't know I'm being admitted. Like he was a young man, like 32 or something. I clearly remember, I won't say it, but I clearly remember his name because that like shook me to my core. So 14 hours he arrived. His saturations were in the 70s, but he was clinically stable physically. And then we put him in like the end beds at the end, and we put him in the bed over there. And then I think that was like 16. He changed condition and went into respiratory distress. Oh my gosh, that man, like, you know, like where they called us, oh, he's changed condition, like we all rushed him, we tried to like, because you have to escalate. Also, he was on nasoprons. So when you put him on nasoprons, it started to saturate in the 90s. So like his saturation started to drop again. So you have to like escalate nasoprons, you move to a simple mask, non-rebreather masks, venturi, like until you actually reach CPAP and intubation. And literally like he just wait, every 30 minutes he'd go up the ladder because this oxygen just wasn't enough. He'd go up the ladder, and then like I remember we really tried our best with that man, and by 18 hours he died. 4 hours. He was in the ward for 4 hours and he died. And that morning he had left his house going for work and he just felt uncomfortable. And then he went to the hospital and they found his saturation was like in the 70s. And COVID was a beast, guys. COVID was like a beast. I think that's like a very traumatizing period in my medical career. And I think that was like one of the scariest things, like just how simple, like life is a mist. Like that man left his family, left his wife and said, I'm going for work. And then he arrived at the hospital and he died within 4 hours. That was a very scary case. I think that was a very scary case. Most of my scary cases, I think, came from the COVID ward. It was a very traumatic period. The most rare case I ever had. Ooh. The most rare case I ever had. Oh, I once had a woman who came in, her only complaint, I think, was difficulty breathing. And she had been admitted repeatedly, that was when I just joined internal medicine. She was in her 40s, 50s about. And she had been admitted repeatedly for pneumonia. And TB tests were negative and everything. And she just kept saying, it's getting worse, it's getting worse. Kind of like the symptoms that she explained, kind of like COPD, kind of, but it wasn't. You know, there was no history to corroborate that story. And she just kept being admitted. And I remember I was like a brand new intern, and this woman was like in my bay, and I didn't know for the life of me what was wrong with her. Her x-rays were okay. Everything was okay. I'm just like, this woman is having difficulty breathing. And then like she kept desaturating. So like when you put her on oxygen, she'll be fine. And then when you move her off oxygen, like the saturations go down. And I'm like, what is wrong with this woman? This was even before COVID. This was like in 2020, before COVID like peaked in Zambia, early 2020s. And so like I didn't know what was wrong with this woman. And so I called my consultant and I'm like, okay, there's something wrong with this woman. And like he took a look at her. And I remember like he was a boss. Like he knows the stuff. If you work at my hospital, maybe you have an idea of what I'm talking about. But he really knew his stuff. And he looked at her and he was like, what do you see? And I'm like, I don't see anything. I don't see anything. Hello, I was a medical student like last year. I don't see anything. And so he's like, look at her. Can you see how small her mouth is? There is tightening around her mouth. Can you see? Like he started to like point out these little things. And then he was like, what does that tell you? I'm like, I don't know what that tells me. But it turns out the woman had scleroderma, which in my whole career, I've only seen once. I've never seen a patient with scleroderma ever again, unless it was a misdiagnosis, which is very common with scleroderma patients. But for him to just look at her and off the bat know what was wrong with her was very, very impressive. And I think that's my rarest case I've ever had. I think scleroderma. There's another guy who had an ascending paralysis. He wasn't my patient, so I don't really know the details of that case, but that was also a rare case. But I think my most rare case was the scleroderma woman. And after she was diagnosed with scleroderma, she stayed on the ward for like 3 months because she couldn't, she was oxygen dependent basically. Yeah, so that was scleroderma. My most unexpected case. Okay, I have a good one for this. I was so proud of myself. I was an intern, new in internal medicine, new to practicing medicine, and I was in OPD. And if you work at my hospital, that was before the resus place was opened, so all the emergencies would come into like the room that you're seeing patients in. And like the porters wheeled in this girl. She was in her school uniform. She was like probably 15 or so. Wheeled her in on a gurney, unconscious, laying there, and just wheeled her in. And I remember, like, I was like alone at that time. I was like, oh, what the hell? So first instinct is okay, call the boss. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, where do I even start? And mind you, now it may not seem like such a big deal, but that was like early intern days. So for you to catch something, like you feel like a boss, like, okay, I got this. And so she was unconscious, and I went there and I listened to her chest. Her chest was mad congested, like very congested. And so I was like, okay, what are we dealing with? Like a pneumonia kind of thing. I'm like, put her on O2. So they connected her to O2, and I'm because I couldn't get a history. By the way, history is that she was picked up on the side of the road, like unconscious, lying on the side of the road. Well, wishers picked her up and rushed her to the hospital, dumped her with the porters and left. So the porters brought her and dumped her with me. So I don't know the history. I just know she was picked up unconscious in the road. So I'm like, okay, pneumonia, unconscious, like what's the correlation? And so like I start to do an examination. And the first thing is I notice her pupils are like pinpoint, very, very pinpoint. Okay, pinpoint pupils and congested chest. And so like I start to look like down the side for like any markings or anything. And then I noticed she has actually soiled her underwear. So pinpoint pupils, congested chest, and soiled underwear. And I was like, organophosphate poisoning. And if you have managed organophosphate poisoning patients, usually they'll come with a history that they already did take organophosphate poisoning, or you will smell it on them. This girl didn't smell of anything. So I was like, okay, I can't smell it. Still, atropine. So they gave me like atropine. I think I gave her like 4 rounds of atropine. And I was just there like, give it. I would hear the congestion reducing and her pupils were like starting to like dilate. And then finally like she woke up and she was conscious. And I was like, what happened to you? And she's like, no. Well, anyway, the history was an intimate issue. Like basically, she found out she was pregnant and the father of the baby, like one of those dramatic teenage stories. And so she bought a certain drug from someone who told her that if you want to kill yourself, you can use this. And she injected it IV. I don't know what drug it was that she bought. I mean, I know that it was that, but then I don't know what drug exactly she used, and she also didn't remember the name, but someone sold it to her. And when they sold it to her, I don't know how she knew where her veins were, because she said she wasn't a drug user, and she injected it IV. Now, can you imagine the state that she came in for it to be IV, not oral, not inhaled, IV? And like, I remember after that, like when my boss came, she was like already stable. And so when he came, and I was like, no, it was OPP. And he was like, I don't think it could have been OPP. And I'm like, no, but I swear, like, this girl arrived near death. Like, I've just resuscitated, like it was OPP. He's like, no, maybe she had like a parasympathetic overdrive. You know, maybe those are the signs that you saw. Until she woke up, like when she was fully conscious, and she told us the story. And then he's like, oh, wow, it's good you caught that. Because many people wouldn't have caught that. Like, that was like my first in 10 years. And I was like, yeah. Medical school pays off. So yeah, that was a very, very interesting case. I remember I was really proud of myself because all the other OPP patients I saw before and since then, I always knew it's OPP before I saw the patient. I could always smell it. I always got the history, but that one just came in like unconscious. And for me to make that diagnosis just based off examination was very impressive to me as a new intern. My first death. There are some deaths that have like shook me quite a little bit. My first death I remember was as a medical student. I was working in OPD, and a mother like came rushing in with, she was holding a baby like against the chest, and she came rushing in. She's like, help me. And so like she put the baby on the bed, and I grabbed my stethoscope immediately and listened. Like the doctor was like running from the other end, and I listened, and I heard that already there was no heartbeat. And the first thing I noticed actually was that the body was already cold, and then there was no heartbeat. And the doctor came. The doctor I was working with, I was a student, listened to the chest and checked the PPUs, and the body was cold. And he was like, no, I'm sorry, the child is already gone. Was starting to get cold, sorry. The child is already gone. And like when he broke it to her, like she cried. And so I was like, okay, I'll take her, because she came alone, her and the child. She said she just came running from home. And so for her to go to BID, I was like, okay, I'll take her. And so like I gathered her stuff, like her bag and her chitenge that she came with and everything, and I was like, let's go, mom, I'll take you to BID. And the whole way walking there, she was bawling her eyes out, like she was holding a baby and just crying. And I remember like my heart breaking, because that was like my first death that I witnessed. Because, you know, working as a student, like, I didn't really witness that many deaths, but that one broke me. And I saw her, like, walking there, holding a baby and crying, and I was just like, oh, Lord, no, this is the worst. Now, since then, of course, I have, like, witnessed many more deaths. I have told many more people that they have lost their loved ones. But the first one, I think, like, shook me to my core, because I was like, okay, this is my career. Okay. You know, it kind of, like, to see a woman cry like that. I have seen deaths, especially in pediatrics. Death is bad in every department, don't get me wrong, but in pediatrics, where I have seen grown men crying over their children, I have seen couples that have been trying to get pregnant for years have lost countless number of children. This one child is the one that actually came out alive. It was a premature, but was admitted into the prematurity ward, and the child just it was just horrible. Long story short, went into DIC. And, you know, like the way she took that news, like she was just like, okay. Like, oh my gosh, I hate it so much. I really, really hate it. I think death is one of the hardest things. In this career, it's one of the hardest things. Like, you have to kind of like detach yourself, otherwise you go mad. But again, you can't detach yourself to the point that you're not able to empathize with your patient. So it's a bit of a tricky situation, but yeah, death is really not the best thing. My first cannulation, I think I did speak about this before several times on my channel, how my first cannulation was a disaster. And there was blood everywhere. Like a nurse, a midwife actually is one who taught me how to cannulate. And like she told me what to do, and I was trying to do it, and like when I put out the needle, like blood just passed through, and the woman was like kind of already ill, so she didn't have the energy to fight back, but she just like stood there and watched me. Bless her heart. But I spoke about this before in one of my previous videos, but basically it was just horrible. It was a mess. Blood spilled everywhere, and she had to like come, the midwife who was teaching me like had to like take over, and I just like stood on the side with my gloves covered in blood, and I was just like watching like, oh no, what did I do? And she was like, no, don't worry, it gets better. And then she like took me step by step and told me what I did wrong. So basically I cannulated and then I pulled out the needle without blocking the blood from coming out. So basically I just like freely pulled out the needle. And then when I was trying to like unscrew the cap from the needle to put it back on the cannula, like it was oozing. And then like trying to stop it, I tried to like put my finger there instead of blocking it from like the, I don't know the parts of a cannula, from like the little thing that's inside the vein, you kind of like hold it down. I put my finger on the tip there, and that didn't help because like I couldn't get the lead from the needle with my other hand because I wasn't skilled enough. Now I can do it with one hand, but I wasn't skilled enough at that time. So it was just a mess. So I had to like let go and get the lead. Like it was just a mess, you guys. And the woman I was cannulating was so patient. She was so kind. Because if that were me, I'd be like, no, get someone else. But she was so patient, she was so kind. And then immediately, like, the midwife sprang into action and just, like, took over. By the way, it wasn't a pregnant woman. This was in internal medicine. And she just sprang into action and kind of, like, took over and everything. And she taught me. And she's like, no, you did this. You're supposed to do this, you do this, you do this. And, yeah, she gave me that same day. She gave me, like, I think 3 more patients to try on. And by the end of the day, I was comfortable. And by the end of the week, I was a pro. That was in my student years. So by then, like, yeah, thank God she gave me something to do. I think like that was the easiest, I think that was the only procedure that I ever struggled with, I believe, because every other procedure that I have done, catheterization, lumbar puncture, suturing, all these small things, I've never struggled. But I think cannulation was such a struggle for me to learn. And fast forward now, my cannulation game it's on point. Like, I work in peds. At least I can say that, not to brag, but at least I can say that even though people are not able to cannulate a patient, I'm the one who's going to come and cannulate that patient. Not always though, because there are times when like also me, I'm just like, no, I really can't do this. But my cannulation game is on point. I can say that. So I guess she taught me well. My best procedure. Oh, okay. So this is kind of like going into the next point. My best procedure, I would say, is a cannulation, because rarely do I fail to cannulate a patient. If I have failed to cannulate a patient, then like you're just a very difficult cannulation. Because I have had obese women, I have had chubby babies, I have premature babies. I usually always get my cannula. I may have to take more than one try on some patients, but for me to walk away from a patient, ever since I started practicing medicine, for me to walk away from a patient and said I have failed to cannulate, less than 10. Okay, maybe less than 15. No, less than 10. I would like to believe less than 10. Like, yeah, my cannulation is really, really good. That's my best procedure. I would say my other best procedure that I like to do now that I'm in peds, I would say is an intraosseous. I would say it's probably putting in an intraosseous. I like that. I recently learned how to do it as well, so that's why I think I'm enjoying it. Putting in an intraosseous. What else do I like to do? I think that's about it. I despise doing lumbar punctures. I liked it. Okay, I didn't like it, but I was okay with it in internal medicine. Anywhere else, no. But yeah, lumbar puncture, I despise. I despise with everything within me doing a lumbar puncture. But yeah, with my cannulations, suturing, I feel like in the beginning I liked it, then I kind of like fell off, not so much. Intubation, which I recently learned how to do, I think is fun when it's just like you're there and you intubate, not when you have to start doing the connections and the machine. No, that is, I don't like the lungs, I don't like the calculations, I don't like that. But just the actual act of intubating, yes. If I have to intubate and use an ambu bag, yes, 100%. But anything else other than that, no. What other procedures do I have to do? Oh, dislocation reductions. I didn't like them. I hated them. I was able to do them, but I didn't like those procedures. And then I was saving the last for the last point, which is my worst procedure. My worst procedure in life, in the hospital, in the years of internship, is inserting an NGT. Ooh, I hate it. I hate it so much. Now that I work in NICU, it's a little bit better. In the babies, it's a little bit better. I hate inserting an NGT in kids, children, adults. If it's an adult, it's the worst. I hate inserting NGTs. Like, it's just a very disgusting procedure. I hate inserting an NGT. I don't think I'll ever enjoy it. I don't think I'll ever be looking forward to it. I think that's my worst procedure. I hate inserting an NGT. Like I said, in NICU it's not so bad, but it's not something that I enjoy. So yeah, guys. So those are my internship reflections. I have managed to share a little bit of what I experienced as an internship. I hope you did enjoy this video, and if you did, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you are an intern, comment down below and let me know like some of the points that I raised in this video, whether it's one patient that you always remember your best or your worst case, whether it's a procedure that you like or you hate, an answer to any of the questions that I asked. Just comment down below because I would love to hear what you're currently experiencing. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.